much time into WMC Master. I must know this person because I have a plethora of questions, and I want to give you the seat right now. I want you to introduce
Sure.
yourself, what this book means to you, and why did you want to do an oral history of WMAC Master?
Well, yeah, that's kind of the why are you crazy enough to spend that much time on a
No.
kids TV show from the 90s? So yeah, I'm a writer. I've been a writer, well, pretty much my whole life. But
Mm,
last year, my first novel came out, and I was very proud of it. It was doing really well. It was on a new publisher, that was just starting up. I was their best-selling author. I was selling copies on Twitter. It was going
cool.
really well. And then the publisher decided to never pay any of his authors and any of his
Jeez.
staff, and he fled the country, last I heard. So,
Oh, like
um,
like NFTs. People just
so,
buy
so
them and then leave.
and just go.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a kick in the pants, and I was feeling really down about,
Sucks,
my
man.
writing. I'm a stay-at-home dad to now two, at the time one,
No.
kids. I'm a stay-at-home writer dad, and I just didn't feel up to trying to write another novel. You always have a million ideas going
Yeah.
on, but
Yeah.
I didn't feel capable of moving on to another fiction book.
Yeah.
And, as most people do, or at least I do, when I'm feeling down, I tend to go back to the things
Hmm.
that were comforting for me, nostalgic for me. And, my son's one, he doesn't care what we watch on TV. So I'm
Yeah.
watching YouTube on the Apple TV, and I'm like, oh, WMAC Masters, the algorithm recommended that. So cool. We'll watch an episode of that. And watching the episode turned into watching the whole series. And we get to the end of the series, and that ending is always kind of stuck with me because it's
Oh
the
my
first real
god.
cliffhanger I
It
remember.
is.
You know, first one I remember being cognizant of, and I watched it and I went, man, I wonder if anyone's ever written, a blog article, a Medium article, or anything about
Yeah.
what was supposed to happen. And so, you go to the Google machine and you throw it in there, and no one ever has. So I'm like, all right, I've got just enough credibility as a novelist and as a journalist. I used to cover the Columbus Crew here in Columbus, Ohio, the
Cool.
Major League Soccer club. So I've got some legit journalistic credentials. I've interviewed people. I
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
press conference with Zinedine Zidane once. That was the coolest thing
Cool.
ever. But so I start sending emails to anybody who has like a dojo still. So some of these cast members still teach martial arts. Chris Casamassa has a whole business where he advises people.
Yeah.
And Chris Casamassa, who played Red Dragon, he played Scorpion in Mortal Kombat. He was the first person to answer me, and he said, "Yeah, I'll talk to you. Yeah, no
Whoa.
charge. Yeah, nothing. Just here's just drop your info into my schedule, and we'll set up a time to talk." And somebody the caliber of Chris Casamassa, who's one of the bigger names, today out
Mm-hmm.
of that crew, and cast, I should say. Him saying yes really kind of gave me that credibility. And so at first I was thinking, I'm just going to ask some questions about what it was like to make the show. I didn't know what form the piece would take. I thought maybe it would be a blog article.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd
Yeah.
write something for Medium and make a couple bucks through clicks. And what I found was every time I talked to someone, they were like, "Oh, you should get in contact with this person. Here's their email address.
That's so
You should
cool.
talk to Isaac Florentine, the director." Isaac's like, "Who do you need to talk to?" I can't do an impression of him because he's just such a personality that
Yeah.
it's impossible to do an impression of. But he's like, "Who do you need to talk to?" And he sent me an email, like pages of email addresses for people for me to reach out to, and it became much much bigger, and it became, oh, I'm going to do a book on this show because I've talked to so many people. And it all kind of led to talking to Norman Grossfeld, who was what we now would call the showrunner, executive producer, the guy
Yeah.
kind of steering the ship creatively for the show, and kind of getting to ask him, well, what was supposed to happen. And that kind of was in my heart always kind of the goal to find that out. And then I did, and now I'm like, oh shit, now there's an actual book here. And I've been very very fortunate. I've spoken to everyone from the cast except for Ho Sung and Ho Young Pak,
Okay.
Michelle Mouse Krasnu, Murmur Chen, and then Tanaya Noguchi, Black Widow, who
Yeah.
I don't think actually exists. I don't think Tanaya exists, but that's a whole other topic.
Oh man, well, that's great. Like this is so cool because when we watch the show, I think most of a majority of the people that will watch the stream, they were so mind blown that this show was at the peak of like Street Fighter, Street Fighter games, Mortal Kombat games.
Yep.
And a lot of we saw that at that, I mean, I was in that like era, so people were getting more into martial arts. The people were getting more into like Power Rangers were introducing like martial arts for kids. Like it was acceptable. It wasn't like a dorky thing. It was like kind of cool to learn it. It was a sport. It was there's a sense of like respect in within the martial art like world in the 90s. It was like blowing everywhere. So seeing this show, and I remember seeing this show after Fox Kids. So here in LA we have Fox Kids. It's like after the cartoons will play, and then at the tail end of the cartoons, WMAC Master will have that time slot. So I would catch it maybe vaguely every so often, but it wasn't until recently, which is so funny. You talk about the YouTube algorithm, because the YouTube algorithm recommended me a WMAC Master like episode 1, and I watched it, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this show was like way ahead from a lot of other shows. And the writing style has inspired so many TV shows like wrestling. It did so much like in general. So it piqued my mind as to how the show kept going. And some shows to me, I think some of the funnier episodes was like, I forgot who's the one of the WMAC Master that falls in love with like the astronaut.
Red Dragon,
Red Dragon, right?
Red Dragon Space Girlfriend.
It's so good.
That's season 1, episode 5, and that episode is the most 90s thing you could possibly do. That doesn't just have Red Dragon Space Girlfriend. That has the WMAC Masters dance party.
It does, yes.
That has Shannon Lee, air quotes around Shannon
Lee
singing a really terrible R&B song.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, it's in there too.
It's so wild. It's
so good, and I just love that they were so creative, because they had they had to get around a lot of it was already at a really difficult time slot. It was right after the cartoons, and just seeing the show progress, and then seeing the big change in season 2, which everybody on the stream was very impressed. Like, whoa, they totally went straight into like building characters within like, now we're focusing on like the different relationships with each master, how like it's affected from the season 1. I like that they carried a lot of things, although I would say that a lot of the characters came out of nowhere. Like Black Widow, I only saw her once, I think, at some point, but I think they brought her in season 2. And in season 2 she's like, I'm retiring. It's like, we only saw you in one fight.
Yeah, she was a plot device. And, I mentioned earlier, I'm not convinced she exists. Obviously, someone played her.
Of course,
she's listed online as Tanaya Noguchi is the name she's listed as. Myself, some people who are much better at research than I am who have helped me, we cannot find any trace online or in physical documentation of someone named Tanaya Noguchi being in Orlando, Florida to shoot the show around that time. There's no digital footprint for this woman. There are no records. There's nothing. I have not been able to find who played this woman. None of the cast remember anything about her.
Really?
Wow. Well, she was there. Even the producer, Norman Grossfeld, the guy who was in charge, he was like, pretty sure she was just an extra. So, for such an important, she was almost like a plot device more than a character. She was like, doesn't quite qualify as a MacGuffin, but she's almost a MacGuffin. So it's really been frustrating for me, because I wanted to talk to everybody and she just doesn't exist. But if you're on the stream and Tanaya Noguchi, the actress who played Black Widow,
get us in contact. Inbox.
You know how to find me.
So I mean, in your sense, when you started kind of digging more and more into WMAC Master, and you just mentioned that there's a community, what were your first steps to know, like example, you told us that you were able to talk to the producer and then they gave you like a lead for that, but have you met other community members who are also kind of collectively trying to gather a lot of more information about the show?
There have been quite a few people. The two most helpful guys have been Mel from the Fourth and 15 podcast. They're on Facebook. Mel and his buddy Ronnie Smooth. They're Mel and Smooth. They were actually kind of flying the flag for this whole kind of thing before I was kind of starting the book. Done YouTube interviews for their channel with a lot of the cast and got a lot of really great information. They're
That's
two
cool.
great dudes. They're from Cleveland, Ohio, which I didn't know at the time, but I'm from Columbus, Ohio. But they've interviewed a lot of the cast. Jamie Webster actually put me on to them, and because
Oh,
he
that's
thought they
cool.
might be able to help me get in
Yeah.
touch with some people, and they did. But Mel from Mel and Smooth podcast has been really, really instrumental in helping me get a hold of some of the guys. And they just do great work up there. They do a lot for inner city sports up there. They cover high school football, but they just two guys who love the show, love martial arts,
That's
and
cool.
just wanted to help spread the word. And then the other is I'm probably going to butcher his name, and he's going to mock me endlessly for it. But Cytonius from OmniFrame. OmniFrame's a YouTube channel. He does video essays, and he did a video essay about the show, and he goes
Cool.
into a lot of depth about it. But what first brought him onto my radar was he tacked on there was a sales tape for the show when it was in one of its early
Oh,
iterations
whoa.
called Martial Masters, and it had a lot of early iterations of some of the characters. It had some people listed as playing characters who never made the show, and so I reached out to him just like I reached out to Mel. And I was just like, "Hey, man, this is what I'm doing, and they've both become two of my biggest supporters, but I owe a lot to them in turn because they've helped me with a lot of stuff, and just they really were kind of flying that flag before I kind of stepped onto the scene. I think somebody on Twitter said something ridiculous like I built a community for it. I'm like, no, 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 no. I made a Facebook page and a Twitter account and a Patreon where people can kind of like hub. The community was already there. The people were already interested. I just gave them a place to land. Like I cannot take any sort of credit for building a community or
Yeah.
anything. I'm just glad there are other people who are interested in the show who want to talk about it.
Yeah, I feel you. I think the majority of people are like for me for myself, which I'm happy to say I think I've become such a huge fan of the show now after the second season and being able to just say, wow, this show if it had a third season, I that cliffhanger in season 2 was so I think everybody in the chat was scratching their head. We're like, what is happening? What is I think people slept on a character. It's such a great turn, and I think that was like a really cool, um, major like moment within everybody that everyone's like, I don't, I don't understand life anymore. Why the tsunami? What's going on? There were so many questions, and even now, I think the show is going to. I hope, and this is my dream, which is that I hope people see the show and appreciate it and really put it up in the mantle with other live shows that are going on,
Yeah.
especially seeing that the as someone who's been in production and shows and stuff like that, seeing that they utilize everything that Universal Studios Florida had, especially other backgrounds from other TV shows to
Yeah.
make it work. I think
Yeah.
am I wrong or am I correct? We've been trying to really within the community here, but were they filming at the Legends of the Hidden Temple stage? It felt like that one stage with
The
the
Mayan
Tolmec,
stage.
yeah,
I
the
know
Maya
it's
stage,
yeah,
yeah.
the not to the best of my knowledge, no one's
Mm,
ever mentioned that show
gotcha.
shooting there concurrently. They might have shot that show there as well,
Yeah,
but no one that I've spoken to has remembered like any sort of crossover.
cool.
I feel like if that show was shooting at that time, they probably would have mentioned the giant Olmec head,
Yeah, yeah.
being there that they would have had to shoot around. I know that they shot on the Kong set.
Oh, yeah,
Pardon me, sorry.
yeah.
The Danger or the Doom City set is
I saw that.
Kong.
Yeah,
Um, but as far as I know, they didn't. They shot most of those exteriors in it would have been
Hell yeah.
95 and then early 96 were
gotcha,
because they didn't shoot everything sequentially. They didn't shoot like one episode at a time. What they did was they shot all of the fights in the battle zones, and
gotcha.
then they shot all the battle domes, and then they shot all the Inner Sanctum stuff because they only had the one stage.
Oh,
So they shot all the domes, and then they
gotcha.
had to go back and they didn't necessarily write it on the fly, but they kind of wrote it on the fly.
Oh my
Like if
God.
somebody got injured, they write things out. So all those Inner Sanctum segments were actually usually the last things they filmed, unless there was a pickup shot or something like that.
Gotcha. So we have our first question, and this one comes from Polly Online on Twitch. What was the general process that they put together an episode? So what was kind
Sure.
of like step one, and then all the way to step two? Like you just mentioned right now, they would film
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the dome stuff, right? All the dome stuff all together, or they will film all the street stuff together.
Yeah.
In your process, have you heard from them like what was like the script writing process?
Yeah.
Where
Um,
you know, and then vice versa when they started filming.
Yeah, so for season one, they had a little more rigorous process for the layout and the scripts because they had to plan all the vignette segments, the kind of flashback segments.
Yeah,
They called them
no,
the vignettes. That was an integral part of the show for them because it was how they wanted to kind of teach these life lessons, which was a big thing they wanted
yeah,
to do. So they really, coming into the shoots, they had a really solid idea of this episode we need this, and this. This episode we need this, and this. And they shot it as I was saying. They still shot it in that kind of segmented fashion where they did all of the battle zones and they did all
mm,
the domes and they might have shot the domes first. I don't know the actual order, but I know that they did the Inner Sanctum stuff last. The WMAC headquarters. They called those the Inner Sanctum shots.
yeah.
So anything you saw them hanging out in the training rooms, any of the talking, the banter, things like that, the
Hmm.
character development. They shot all that last.
Oh,
There were scripts.
yeah.
There were scripts for the episodes. Those were written in advance, but they were also kind of written around the fights. The fights always were kind of choreographed on their own. They had great fight choreographers and Isaac
Yeah.
Florentine, Pat Johnson, and later Yuji Noguchi. Um, but they wrote the scripts for the backstage stuff and the flashback stuff kind of separate, but around that. Jamie Webster was kind enough to send me. He physically made copies and sent me copies of all the scripts he kept.
That's awesome.
It's insane. But there were a lot of, in shooting, things change.
Hmm,
There are
hmm, hmm.
revisions. There's a change here, there's a change there. So the process for them, as far as I can tell, was they have a script going in. They know who's fighting who. That was always the key focus for them. Norman
Yeah.
Grosfeld, the showrunner, told me that they actually made, like, he described it as a matrix of uh, the main characters, and for them, the main characters were the ones who were in the toy line. You got to remember, Bandai's financing this.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
about they're about selling toys, selling
Yep.
licenses. So
Yep.
you could never go too long without the main characters fighting.
Mm.
Um, I think I counted in the whole series. There's only one or two battle domes that don't feature one of the main characters. I think it might only be two. For the males, obviously, the
Yeah. Yeah.
ladies never got an action figure, unfortunately. But so they would always plan it around the fights, and then they would build off of that. They would want to, in the season one especially, they had, we want to tell Machine story, we want to tell Superstar story,
Yeah.
we want to tell Olympus's story, Yin Yang Man
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, man.
So, so they kind of built around that, and then they would kind of tweak and finally hone the inner sanctum stuff, the kind of character building stuff around that. A lot of it was also once the show started airing, they saw people were reacting better to certain characters. So they're like in the second half of the season, they're like, maybe we'll feature this person more, that person more.
Gotcha. That's crazy. It just because that to me, like seeing the process, I could tell that they had a blast on the first season, but also this pressure of like Saban, and it was Saban, right? Was it Saban Bandai? I think at the time.
It was
The
Bandai, yes.
Bandai, right?
Bandai was the financing company.
Okay.
They're very much linked with Saban.
Yeah.
One or two people involved with the show actually told me that there was a conspiracy theory at the time that some people still believe that Masters was actually doing so well that it was starting to cut into the Power Rangers kind
Oh
of
shit.
margins.
Uh.
And that's why Bandai kind of pulled the plug because I don't know how many people know this, but in between season one and season two, Bandai basically pulled their funding out. So the budget for season two was essentially half of what it was for season one.
It feels
And
so
that's why
weird.
they got rid of That's why they got rid of the flashbacks, because they can't
They
afford to
can't
go
afford
onto
it.
these locations
Oh
anymore,
my
you know.
god. Hey,
Um,
that's
and so
crazy.
so some people, including people pretty high up the food chain, honestly believed, and still do, that it was because they were doing so well that Power Rangers was starting to take a little bit of hit.
Mm.
Obviously, nobody's got any documentation to
Of
back that
course,
up.
of
I wish
course.
they
Yeah,
did,
yeah, yeah.
but where was I going with this?
So just to follow up that too, which is
Yeah,
Bandai being what did in their eyes and the crew's eyes when Bandai was fully funding the first season,
yeah,
did they think at any point we're not gonna get a season two? Or
yeah.
you know,
That's never a thought.
wow.
The goal for the show, from the producers to the cast, the crew, all the way down, they wanted to get into syndication. If you hit 50 episodes, you can go into syndication. You can air Monday through Friday after school, and that's where the real money is.
Yeah, yep.
That's word for word what Norman Grosfeld told me. They were always thinking they were going to get 3 seasons and hit syndication, and then it would really take off. So nobody was ever concerned that they weren't going to get a season two. Nobody was concerned that they weren't going to get a season three. The only people who really knew how dire the situation was financially were the producers. They kept it from the cast pretty well. Most of the
Damn.
cast didn't know that the budget had been cut so dramatically. Nobody took a pay cut. You know,
Yeah,
they didn't stop bringing anybody in. You know, it
that's
was
really cool.
yeah, it was very tightly kept secret.
Now I want to ask you, as far as talking to the producers and stuff, that this show came at the like we spoke earlier, like this show came out at the peak of like Mortal Kombat and all these cool fighting
Yeah.
games. I remember, that was like my bread and butter. It was like I love Mortal Kombat for the fatalities. Was there any negative feedback from parents about WMAC Master? Like, was there any like concerns that they were worried about?
None that anyone ever mentioned to me.
Huh.
I'm sure they got them. Like that
Yeah.
was just the feeling of the times. I
Yeah.
remember clearly around this time, I was in elementary school because I was the target demo for the show.
Yeah.
I remember very clearly the principal coming over the PA, no more Power Rangers at lunch. Kids are getting
Yeah.
hurt, blah blah blah. So,
Yeah.
there was always, I'm sure that they did get some complaints, but I think that it never got to the point where they felt like it was an impediment to the show, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned earlier too that you've seen the pilot episode. I've tried looking for it on YouTube. I
You won't
am
find it. It's
I
not on YouTube.
Oh my god, I was so hard to try to find it. I was like, "Oh man, maybe it's up there." But I mean, are you
Yeah.
one of the few people that have seen it in its completion?
I'm sure that there are quite a few people who have seen it.
Mhm.
I feel like most people, nobody's seen it recently, but me and a couple other people.
Oh
I had to
wow.
sign an NDA saying that I wouldn't
Whoa.
distribute it.
Whoa, really?
Um,
Dang, I really
yeah,
want to watch it
yeah,
now. Give me that indie.
yeah. No, trust me, it's the first episode that actually aired is like 10 times better than this pilot.
We want to watch
You,
it. I
I know.
love
I'm hoping that should a reboot come to pass, okay, let me back up.
Mhm.
The problem is it's really hard to say who owns the rights to this unaired pilot.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and
Can you give us
and
some
that's
little context over
because
that? Yeah, yeah, cool,
yeah, so that's because Bandai was the
cool.
financer, right?
Hmm.
The company that made it was Four Kids Entertainment,
Cool. Yeah.
so Four Kids Entertainment would go on to do Pokemon and all
Yep.
that kind of stuff and
Yep.
make zillions of dollars in all of our childhoods.
Hmm.
Um, but Four Kids Entertainment went under. Bandai pretty much dissolved in the way in the it's Bandai's obviously still a company, but the way it was formatted in the 90s when they were financing this, they kind of dissolved. So what the way it was explained to me was different companies and different people got little bits and pieces
Oh
of
my
WMAC Masters.
god.
Apparently Hasbro owns part of it now. But
What?
you also have
Okay.
the added complication of these were real people using their real names.
Yes.
The contracts they signed were with specific entities. So could you go back and issue a DVD of this if you had the rights without you'd have to go sign
Oh my god.
all of these cast members and pay
Yeah.
them a new contract and a new royalty. So that goes even further for the pilot because the pilot was put out as Quest for the Dragon Star.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
kind of the second name of the series. It was a
Yep.
way station between Martial Masters and WMAC Masters. So it came out as Quest for the Dragon Star. And they ended up scrapping it because Timok, who appears very briefly in season 2 as Striking Eagle, they used some of the footage from the pilot. He was going to be one of the centerpieces, the pillars
Yeah.
of the series. He was going to be one of the first toys. He was going to be, because he had a lot of name value in some people's minds because of the Last Dragon.
Yep.
Um, in his mind, especially, he had a lot of name value. He did not work out. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I go into great detail in this on the Patreon. I did a whole breakdown. I did
That's
a whole month
cool.
breaking down the unaired pilot
Awesome.
and kind of Ty Mock's contributions to it. But suffice to say that the best parts of the pilot you've seen. The pilot basically is, if you cut it in half, the first half, the battle zone fights,
Hmm.
you see bits and pieces of it in the series. You see a little bit of Superstar versus Ty Mock. That fight sucked. Ty Mock was terrible. It was bad. Like Hosung's great,
Yeah,
but
I think
even
also.
Hosung,
Yeah.
Hosung, even though he hasn't talked to me, he's still great.
Yeah.
But even he couldn't save it because Ty Mock was just he didn't look like he wanted to be there.
Mm.
You know. And then the second fight was Machine versus Red Dragon, and you see little bits of that in one of the Ninja Challenge episodes when Red Dragon's wailing on some ninjas.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's reused footage. But basically, if you cut it in half, you see bits and pieces of that first half, but you don't really. It's kind of air quote lost footage. The second
Cool.
half of the show, though, with the exception of some of the like announcer segments, because there are two announcers instead of one. There's William Zabka, Billy Zabka,
Oh shit.
with Shannon Lee, and
Okay.
it's cool, it's different, it's weird, but
Yeah.
he doesn't
Yeah.
really add anything.
Yeah.
But the actual content, the machine vignette and the Battle Dome, they're exactly the same as you see them. The
Mm.
only difference in the machine vignette is instead of being in the inner sanctum, him talking about it, he kind of looks into the camera and narrates it like it's an ESPN
Yeah.
package or something. So the good stuff, the machine vignette and the great Battle Dome to kind of kick off the series, you still see those. So the changes they made for the first episode made the show better.
That's
So
awesome.
you're not missing out much. I'm hoping maybe one day I'll be able to convince the
Cool.
powers that be, if I can figure out who the powers that be are,
That's true.
that they'll let me kind of put up the pilot. But I am not about to risk
That.
that. Definitely not before the book comes out.
No, I don't want you to give out too much, of course, because I want people to go support you and go check out. Definitely, please go check out the Patreon, which I just dropped on the link. Go support it. Go. I'm already a member of the Patreon because I'm so addicted to knowing so much more about this show. And to just a follow up to your question about like Bandai and like the mentality of selling toys, and this is somebody coming from like every show had a video game. Was there
Yes.
any talks at some point within the WMAC universe that
Yes.
they were gonna make a video game?
That was always something they wanted to do. It was always something they explored. I actually was just talking to Norman via email about this
Hmm.
last week sometime, um, because I saw on the Wayback Machine, and I couldn't go back and find it again to try to link him to it. But
Yeah,
somebody said that it was one of those classic "my uncle works for"
gotcha.
stories. But somebody was like, there was a heavy development done. They had done live action motion capture like Mortal Kombat for a WMAC video game with a plug out pulled.
What?
I'm like,
That's so
I'm like,
cool.
I'm like, well, hold the horses. I'm like, somebody would have
Yeah,
mentioned that to me,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Norman was like, that never happened. We always wanted to do a video game, but we never signed a deal. There's certainly no heavy development done.
Dang, that would have
So
been cool.
they definitely wanted to. I think it's fair to say that it would have ended up one of those live action mocap games, a lot like Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat or that
yeah.
atrocious Street Fighter the movie.
Oh god.
I think it would have ended up a lot like that. Around that time period, I think is when they were making the jump to N64. So
Yeah.
they might have tried to do something 3D, but I think
Oh
it's
my
more
god.
likely that it would have been the kind of classic 2D. But it never got past the "we want to do this" stage. It
Oh
never
really?
signed with anybody.
They
Yeah,
never,
it
they
never,
never,
it
they
never
never got
ended.
like a demo from like a company
No,
who was interested. That came up to
no.
them. Okay.
One of our patrons, though, somebody I know
Hmm.
on Twitter, and I am gonna be really professional here and look
Hmm.
up his Twitter account
Yeah,
right
yeah,
here
yeah.
on my
Take your time. Take your
phone
time.
to
They,
plug him because he's done such awesome work. I hope you're watching. He's Lord underscore Mo on Twitter.
okay.
He is currently making the WMAC Masters cast in Fire Pro Wrestling, the current
Whoa.
iteration of
All
Fire
right.
Pro
Yeah, yeah,
Wrestling,
yeah, yeah.
and he is putting in insane amounts of work. He's
That's
making
so
custom
cool.
move sets.
That's awesome.
It is really cool. He's going to put together a little compilation video for me for the cast reunion we're doing in DC
That's awesome.
later this summer.
That's right. Can you talk a
But he's
little bit about that with everybody in here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So this August, August 4th through the 6th in Washington, D.C., in conjunction with the U.S. Capitol Classics, Master Willie the Bam Johnson is putting together a, cast reunion.
That's so cool.
Um, he has very graciously named it after my book. He's asked me to come help out. He's asked me to be there. He kind of put me in charge of reaching out to the cast and just
So
kind of,
cool.
you know, connecting people. I am not running the show. I'm not
Of
organizing the
course, of
show.
course.
He's been so so helpful and so gracious to kind of try to put me front and center to help the book because that's how much he cares and how much this cast cares about
Yeah.
telling this story. That's how much it still means to them. But basically, the Saturday of the tournament, the U.S. Capitol Classics, is one of the two or three biggest martial arts tournaments in the U.S. on the NASCA circuit,
Uh,
and it's the circuit most of these guys and girls came from. But on that Saturday, there's going to be a reunion event. It's going to be a ticketed event. It's going to be like a $20 donation to Master Bam's charity fund.
cool.
So your ticket's going to a good cause. But there
Oh
are going to
yeah.
be several cast members there. I think I've announced everyone publicly at this point, so I can go ahead and list them off. Hakeem Olson will be there. Master Bam will obviously be there.
Yes, sir.
Herb Perez will be there.
Her
Eric Betts will be
Perez.
there. Christine
I, I
Bannon
I got my
Rodriguez,
Her
Lady White will
Perez
be there.
figure right here.
Oh, badass. Um, and then Isaac Florentine, the director, is slated to be there as well. We're still trying to get a couple more yeses, but even if we don't, oh, and Jamie Webster will be there as well. I almost forgot Jamie. I can't believe
Cool.
I forgot Jamie.
So it's like
But
it's a
uh,
pretty big like reunion in a sense, right?
yeah, yeah. There are a few who have unfortunately have other commitments, but
Of course.
we're still hoping to get maybe one or two more, kind of reel them in, as we say.
Cool.
And I'm trying to work out a way to maybe get some like video messages recorded to the fans. Kind of do like a little for some of the people who can't be there, because I know Bridget Riley really wanted to be there. Sophia
Mm,
Crawford really wanted to be there. Chris Casamassa is. I can't say he's not gonna be there because he wants to be there,
gotcha.
but it
Yeah,
looks like
fair,
it's gonna be
fair.
a scheduling conflict. So
All right.
um, he's a very in demand sort of Dragon Star champion, if you know what I mean.
Hey, I feel you. My we have another question here. From Polygon. He mentions, how did the producers recruit the cast members?
Yeah. So the recruiting process was long and intensive. The
Mm.
producers, which I guess I should name them. So there are four major players as far as the production. Al Khan, who is the man who brought Pokemon to America. He was the money guy. He was the
Whoa,
head of four kids.
that's
He's at the
crazy.
top of the pyramid. He
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of day-to-day interaction with the show,
Yeah.
but he's kind of like the emperor. When he comes to town, everybody snaps too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to speak to him. Great guy, gregarious,
Cool.
super fun guy. Carlin West was the lady who came up with the original concept. She took it to Al, and they made it a thing. Al would then recruited Norman Grosfeld and Kathy, at the time Borland, now Pylon, who's
Mhm.
now married to Norman. So Kathy and Norman were kind of the ones running the show day to day. Carlin was the one who came up with the concept. Al was kind of the guy just overseeing
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So Carlin, Norman, Kathy, they went around the country to martial arts tournaments for like 6 to 8 months to a year. They kind of
Ooh.
remembered the timeline differently, but they were traveling around the country to these martial arts
Wow.
tournaments and just scouting talent. Most of the talent came from the NASCA circuit. NASCA is the North American Sport Karate
Yep.
Association. I think I got that right.
Yep. You
I'm
did.
sure
Yeah,
someone will correct me if I'm
yeah.
wrong. Um, but basically, they just cherry picked the best of the best. Pat Johnson, the legendary director, fight choreographer from The Karate Kid, amongst countless others, was heavily instrumental in recruiting some of these people because he had worked with them on Shoot Fighter, on several other things,
It's
but
cool.
he helped bring in a lot of them as well. But the big sales pitch came after the, I want to say, 93 or 94 Battle of Atlanta. Battle of Atlanta is one of the biggest NASCA tournaments, maybe the biggest NASCA tournament in the States. And Willie Johnson remembered there were, he said 50 to 75 people. Norman said that seemed a little high. People in
Mm.
a room, and they offered them contracts. And it was basically this is what we want to do. Sign this if you're interested, and we can work out the details. It was pretty much laying out, here's what
Wow.
what rights you would sign over. Here's,
Mm,
here's what you'd be committing to. And so they basically went and they picked the vast majority of the best of the best. There were a few people who were initially interested and then maybe didn't pan out. And then there
mm,
were a few people they brought in from outside that world, including Herb Perez and Lynette Love
of
from
course.
USA Taekwondo, both Olympic gold medalists. And then Isaac Florentine brought in some of his crew from Power Rangers a little bit later on. He brought over Eric Betts, he and Gwyn, um, Bridget Riley. Um, that whole crew. But
Yeah.
the martial arts tournament scouting brought in Chris Casamassa, brought in the Pac brothers, brought in Hakeem Alston, Christine Shannon Rodriguez.
Yeah.
All those cats came from that NASCAR. Willie Johnson,
Really, John.
Richard Brandon, rest in peace. All
Yeah,
those
yeah.
guys came from that NASCAR circuit. Jamie Webster, Johnny Lee as well. They all came from that circuit. So the
Yeah.
scouting process for season one, for the initial casting of the show, was really, they hit the pavement and they went all around the country and saw just tons of martial arts tournaments.
That's crazy just to see how tedious that was, like trying to, because it was interesting to see so many actual martial artists in the show. Usually you'll see a show and I'm like, yeah, he's a martial artist, but he's not. It's like, of course, it's stunt doubles. But I mean, the show was great because I mean, they were doing all their stunts, they were doing a majority of all the acting, they were doing pretty much everything. What in what sense, like, did they ever look at each other, during the whole process, the actors themselves, right? Like the actors, and look at themselves and be like, would anybody even bother watching this? Like, were they concerned a little bit about that? Just because it was at an era where there were so many TV shows. It was like Power Rangers, you had Masked Rider, you have
Yeah.
Super Samurai, Deeper Squad, or whatever. All this crazy martial arts shows were super heavy engraved in that. You had American Gladiators, you already had all these other shows. Like, how were they like thinking that every episode? I'm quite sure they were thinking like, well, we just got to give it our all. Were they thinking like,
You know, no one ever kind of intimated that to me.
mm,
The feeling I got was that they were all working so hard and the shoots were so crazy that I don't think anybody really had time for self doubt. Something I didn't know going in, I didn't realize going in. They shot the fight scenes at the battle zones pretty much from the time the park closed at like 9 p.m. to about three to
oh
four
my
to five, six
god,
a.m. To about six a.m. right before
must have
they
been
opened. They would break for
exhausting.
dinner. They would break for dinner at 3 a.m. But and and they were on such a tight schedule because of budgets that you rehearsed 1 or 2 days and then you
Hmm.
shot. If you weren't shooting your fight, you were probably rehearsing. Like there
Hmm.
was not a lot of downtime for the vast majority of the cast because they were working so hard. And I actually just today on the Patreon put up an article about how the masters, if it wasn't their fight, they were probably ninjas.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not like if you're not on the docket to be fighting today, you have the day off. Very rarely did that happen.
yeah.
There was a lot of the ninja fights, and so I don't think they really had a ton of time for that sort of doubt to seep in. I think they all
It's
really
cool.
believed in the
Yeah,
show. They
yeah,
all
yeah,
really
yeah.
believed in the concept they were trying to not to sell, but they teaching life lessons through martial arts was something that was near and dear to the cast, and I think is still really near and dear to the cast because, like you're saying, these were all the vast majority of them were all real martial
Yeah,
artists,
yeah,
real world champion
yeah.
martial artists. These
Like,
weren't, people kind of TikTok martial artists who are just doing it for the views. These people
yeah,
had dedicated their lives. These
yeah, yeah.
people had schools.
Yeah,
So
these
I
people can
think
actually
there was.
kick your ass. It was
I'm sure a
not.
lot of TikTok people can kick my ass too, but that's just because I'm a doughy writer from Ohio. You know.
um
Uh,
and my next question too, because like I said, I want everybody to support the Patreon. There's some good stuff in there, especially you updated, and you're writing the book as well, so I want to leave up, but I want to touch a little bit about the merchandise because I
yeah.
was only able to find only a couple things. I found the dome, I found the dragon belt, I found, of course, the figures of the masters. I don't know if there was anything else. Was there like another line for season 2 that we may have missed, including other characters that were not part of that lineup?
Yeah, there were several things that actually never quite saw the light of day. Something that did come out that you didn't mention was the book series. They put
The
out
book
four
series. That's right.
books
We
for
did see the
kids.
book. Yeah, yeah, right, right,
Yeah,
right.
like Scholastic for
Yep.
kids book fairs. They put out a few other battle zones with the action figures. Supposedly, they put out an Olympus Halloween costume for kids.
What? Oh no, there
I
is.
have
Yeah,
not.
we saw an image of it. We thought we were seeing a bootleg. I don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah, yeah. You've seen the same image I have,
Yes.
and I have not been able to. I know they wanted to do it. I know that they wanted to put out several of those. I
Hmm.
think Olympus's was the only one that ever got produced, or at least the prototype got produced. I saw an image of they had like a little catalog where you could order shirts and stuff, and it had like Superstars key symbol, and they had other cool stuff. I'm gonna have to go back and see if I can find it. I'll throw it up on Twitter so
Cool.
everybody can
Yeah,
see.
we'd love to see
As
those.
far as I know, none of that stuff ever came out. There was gonna be a trading card line, never
That
came out.
okay? That's one thing I
Um,
was gonna ask you too about the trading cards. I was like, I wonder if they had trading
yes,
cards. That's so
there was they
cool.
were they were going to do trading cards. I think the only actual trading card they did was just like the show logo on a card that they gave to some of the cast.
Uh,
As far as the action figures, yes, there was going to be another wave of action figures. I have not been able to confirm who the entire wave was going to be, but I can tell
mhm.
you Tracer, uh, Warlock, Wizard, those three for sure had reference photographs taken.
That's cool.
Master Bam, remember seeing a drawing of him as an action figure, so I'd say that's likely. Chameleon said she was told she was going to be an action figure.
Okay, yeah.
Um, and then there would probably have been at least one or maybe two more. Norman said, look at who was featured in the second season. That's probably going to tell you who they're going to be. So, you know, that covers a lot of the bases. I don't think Cyclone would have been one. Unfortunately, you might
Yeah,
have got Yin Yang Man in there.
yeah.
You might have got Lady Lightning in there. And then there is one other thing kind of related to action figures that I actually can't talk about because it's a pretty big one, and I
Okay.
do go into detail in it in the book.
I rather. Yep.
I will
Save it.
just say
Save it for
that
the book, man. Save it for
it,
the book.
there, there was a lot of stuff I was really surprised about. I can tell you that they wanted to make everything. Like,
That's
you know how
awesome. Yeah.
Kiss has put out everything?
Yeah.
Kiss has
Yeah.
put their name on everything. WMAC Masters wanted to do that because in Bandai's eyes, this show existed as a vehicle to sell licenses, to
Oh
sell
yeah.
toys. I actually was looking up the other day um, the trademark filings, the original, what they trademarked, and they trademarked the dragon logo, and the trademark filing for that was like this long. It just kept going and
Oh my
going
god.
because they wanted to include everything. And it's not that they had solid plans for
Hmm.
any of these things, but they wanted the option to do everything from like lunch boxes, keychains, VHS tapes, which obviously they did make. Ice cream bars. Like it went on and on and on because they just did this kind of giant just in case filing because they wanted to make everything. I think the most likely things we missed out on. Oh, actually, there's one thing I can tell you.
Hmm.
This one, since I just kind of tease something for the book, I'll be good and tell
Yeah.
something. I spoke to someone who was in one of the companies that was contracted to work with the show. They were working on. You remember in the '90s how those kind of interactive or interactive encyclopedia CD-ROMs were a big thing,
Yes. Yes.
kind
Yes.
of like
Yes.
Encarta. They were working on a martial arts WMAC version of that with the show. It was going to be an interactive WMAC Masters branded martial arts encyclopedia.
Wait, it's so funny because on season two, there is is that a reference to that? Because they're like, this is we could check out every single fighter within the WMAC message.
Yeah,
Was that kind of the idea that they got out of?
I think that it might have been them trying to kind of plug something they were hoping was actually coming out. I know they
Cool.
did that a lot with the WMAC Master schools that they really, really wanted to open. That was a big thing and a big reason why the show didn't end up being able to continue was
Mm.
because certain parties didn't quite get the concept of
Yep.
the branded martial arts school. Um, but yeah, it could have been. It also could have just been. I know that by the time they got to that point in season two, they were just trying to get the shows in the can, so
Yeah.
it might not have been
Ah,
anything deeper on that one.
my god. And I definitely would like to ask you, what is your favorite WMAC Master episode from any of the
Favorite
season?
WMC Masters episode? Oh,
You could choose one. If you're like, this
choose
is the one.
one.
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta. I want to. I have to go to actually my manuscript here because before I say something, I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing here
I
because I'm
bet.
pretty sure I'm. No, that's that one, not that one. Man, that's so hard.
I put you on the
I can
spot. I'm
tell
so
you.
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I can tell you mine's if you want, just to kick it off.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it while I
I'd
walk back and
say
forth here.
my favorite one is the machine episode.
The very first one.
The one where it covers his backstory and why they call him the
Yeah, the very
machine.
first
Yeah,
episode.
I think to me that is like if you have to introduce the show to anybody, I'd say watch episode 1,
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
like
Yeah,
you'll get like you'll be like, why are they fighting? It's like just keep watching. It gets good. Like this is
just keep watching.
the backstory to the
That's
machine is so good and so hilarious because it's like, he's like, they call him the machine. Why do they call him the machine? It's so, you're thinking like, oh, this guy like cybernetically removed his bones. You're thinking of like the worst of the worst, and then you get to that point where it's like, oh man, he got beat up. He lost like his bones got like completely fucked and all that shit. But then it has like the coolest like way it ends, right? He like, oh, like, you know what? I could have had revenge, but I'm better than that. It's so such a
yeah.
cool way for him, and a cool way to like introduce the show because I felt like that was like, gotta watch it. Once you watch this, every other episode's golden. But I think the first one really puts the roots down to get you like really hooked onto the show.
And I don't know if I can pick a single episode. I can tell you what some of my favorite fights are. I
Oh,
can
yeah,
definitely do
please,
that.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So my favorite preliminary fight. Now that I'm back on my screen here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm back. I don't know what that looked like to everybody
No,
on the
no, it's
stream.
just
I
no,
apologize.
you're
It's just
okay.
me going. My favorite fights are in season 2. You've got Kid Carmichael versus Larry Warlock Lamb. That fight is Carmichael actually told me that they called that the fastest fight in WMAC Masters history, not in like time duration, but as far as
Okay.
how much they packed into it. He actually sat on a Zoom call with me and we watched it together, and he kind
Mm,
of gave me like a behind the scenes commentary on
it's
it.
cool.
And being I'm not super well versed in martial arts cinema. I'm not super well
Yeah,
versed in Hong Kong cinema or
yeah.
anything like that. And to someone my age, that's kind of always been there. The Matrix, Jet Li, it's always kind of been there. He
Mm-hmm.
pointed out to me that at the time 95, 96, people weren't doing that in America yet. You had Jackie Chan, but it hadn't really hit that kind of ubiquity that
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
it
Yeah,
has now.
yeah.
And so that fight really hits home for me as far as like one of the best, just because A, it's two guys who don't necessarily get showcased that much. B, it's just an amazing fight that was so different and so ahead of its time. And C, it was also choreographed by Yuji Noguchi, who really added a lot to the show, and unfortunately, due to his injury, didn't get to showcase nearly as much as he should have.
Yeah.
So those that preliminary fight's one of my favorites for sure. My favorite Battle Dome fight is the second time Great Wolf and Red Dragon go at it. It's in
Oh,
the
that one's
second season.
good. Yeah.
I think I think that one is like the best Battle Dome in the series. It's just got everything, so many cool moves, so much drama.
Yeah.
Like, watching the show, kind of binge watching it, which I had to do several times for this
Yeah.
book and probably am not done doing. Oh, God help me. Um, I love this show, but
Me
man, after
too.
like the 30th
Oh
viewing
yeah.
in a year,
Oh, I
whew,
bet. I bet.
um, but you start to see kind of some of the Battle Dome tropes, so to
Of
speak,
course, of course,
kind
of
of
course.
run
There's yeah.
together. It's like okay, yeah, we're going to sudden death because somebody scored at the last minute. All right, we get it. And this fight, managed to pack so much
Uh,
into it and still do something fresh and cool.
yeah.
And that one was really fun. And then my favorite like Dragon Star fight. How can you not pick the subway fight like that?
Yeah.
Come on, that's like to me that's just like where the
Yeah.
show kind of
Yeah. I
it was
think.
the mixture of the
Yeah.
drama and the fighting.
I would definitely say that episode really caught everybody off guard on the Twitch
Yep,
stream because we weren't
yep,
expecting it to go that route, and we knew
yep,
that they were in Universal, but that moment I was like, wow, they really thought out this fight, and it's choreographed really well. I think my favorite part out of that is when the machine grabs a mannequin and just Whipley. It cuts to him picking up a mannequin and just Whipley throws it out. It's so good.
He's actually holding an actual ninja, and then they cut the mannequin in.
Yes, that's
Norman or Isaac. I don't remember who told me it. It was either Norman or Isaac told me that was something they didn't plan, and they called it just on set. They're like, Hakeem, do this, and it ended up making the final cut. It was just that was the kind of freedom they had
it's so good.
as producers and directors to be
Yeah.
like, hey, this could work. Try this, and yeah, that I was actually going to tell that story if you didn't mention that. That's
Oh
so
no,
funny.
that part. I think that part killed me the most. It was such a quick take, but because I edit videos and I'm always looking at each keyframe, right? Like once one part of a scene changes, I'm like focused again. I'm like doing
Yeah.
this focus thing. And that moment, it took me out of like the world it was, and I was like, all right, that was pretty funny. I think in my head, I thought they probably said, kids, they're not gonna see this shit. They don't care, so let's just throw it in there and just toss them up.
Yeah. This one's not going to be on VHS. We need to go freeze. Speaking of mannequins, have you ever noticed that the council in the upper deck of the arena, it's mannequins?
Yes,
90% of the time.
I caught that. I think midway, I was like, they're not moving when they're all this clapping and all this like excitement. I'm like, I don't think no one's there at whatever time. I'm guessing whatever time they were filming. They're like, we just don't have the time to get extras at.
Well, no, what it was the unaired pilot. They had park goers dress up and sit up there in the council, and it was so hellish because it took so long.
Yeah.
People hated it, and people had to go to the bathroom. People, and you couldn't sub new people in for shot continuity.
Yep.
So once they did the pilot, they were like, "We're not gonna do that again."
Yeah. Dang, I didn't know that. I feel bad for anybody who went there. Like, oh, a free show. Let me put on a hot ninja suit.
Right, and
on
it's a
top
show
of
that nobody knows. Like it's a brand new thing that no one's seen on TV before. You're not going to the WCW Saturday Night tapings.
Oh yeah. It's funny you bring up wrestling again, because I was on. I tried to dig some more info, just like you, and trying to really figure out kind of like what was the feel, in a sense, like did it inspire anything else? And I saw on Reddit that someone said that WMAC's Masters second season plot was used in Lucha Underground for a season or so, like that was like somehow they ripped story by story, in a sense, into Lucha Underground. Do you know if that's true or not? Because I've only read a couple things about it.
I haven't watched Lucha Underground in a very long time, and I didn't finish the series. Season 2 lasted for fucking ever.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I loved Lucha Underground. I thought it was really cool, but it lasted way too long.
Yeah, me too.
I don't remember it being a beat for beat kind of retelling of WMAC Masters. I've been trying to get in touch with Chris DeJoseph, who was the executive producer of Lucha Underground. Yeah. I've been trying to get in touch with him just to try to see maybe, if it was an influence. I haven't been successful in that yet. I do know that there was a Lucha Libre, family-friendly kind of comic book Lucha Libre company called Chikara Pro, based out of Philadelphia. And I interviewed one of their luchadors. He was putting together some of the storylines to the end, and he said they basically straight up ripped off WMAC Masters for one of their storylines.
Oh, really?
His name was Ophidian. Yeah, it was towards the end. They had basically Ophidian was training these recruits, and it was this kind of faction that was within Chikara, but it was also working against what Chikara stood for, and so it was kind of that Jukido thing. And he said, yeah, it was totally inspired by that, but he used the phrase that he was taught, talent borrows, genius steals. So he's like, yeah, we just stole it.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, spoiler alert for watching this VOD or on YouTube, season finale of WMAC Master really took us it made me
a hard left.
A crazy hard left. Like, I was not expecting this guy who I was like, he's not gonna do anything. He's not Tsunami's like the cool dude you just chill on the side, become like it ended on a high note, because it was just like the one guy I trusted. And there was an episode where I thought, could he be it? And then they did a good job of really hiding it again.
Yeah.
And I forgot what episode it
Well,
was when he like kind of did a face look, because I think uh the wolf guy was like, I had a dream that you were,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then he's like,
Yeah,
me,
the
I'm
Vision of Evil. Yeah,
you
Vision
know.
of Evil Part One.
Yeah, and I was like, and then we caught a bit of a whiff of it, but then it got proven, that it was wrong or
Yeah.
something. But do you
You want to hear
know?
something crazy?
Yeah, I do. Please, please, please.
Uh, you said it caught you by surprise
Yeah,
that Tsunami was turning heel, so to
yeah.
speak. Caught him by surprise too. They didn't tell him till it was time to shoot.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he didn't know until, I asked him. I
Yeah,
was like, when I interviewed him, I hadn't found out what the plans for season three were. Yeah, there was kind of, I had two calls with Norman, and we talked about it in the second one.
cool.
But I talked to Ian, Tsunami. I was like, so what was gonna happen, man? Were you a bad
Mhm.
guy? Were you secretly a good guy? He's like, dude, you're gonna hate me. I don't know. They didn't tell him what the arc was.
That's the
I was like,
worst.
oh.
And did they tell you why? Did they tell you why they told him last minute? Was it just to catch him and make him? Because for an actor, you kind of have to know
Yeah,
a little bit of what the script is gonna be based off, so you kind of picture what's gonna happen.
yeah.
But has he ever talked about
So So as far as I can kind of tell, no
Mm,
one ever really gave me like a straight up answer for it.
mm,
Part of it was the nature of how they wrote it. Like I said, at the end of filming is when they were doing these scenes,
yeah.
and a lot of things happen. Eric Betts and Bridget Riley were both supposed to be part of season two, and they both left the show for different reasons. So
Mm,
they had to kind of rewrite things there. So I think part of it was they were kind of writing as they went, reacting to the ratings that what the fans were enjoying,
mm.
reacting to injuries, reacting to somebody got a job offer somewhere else.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think they didn't want, and this is speculation. This is not something that anyone told me. This I want to make sure to preface. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
purely
Yeah. Yeah.
speculation on my part, kind of reading between the lines. I think they didn't want there to be a feeling of certain characters or fighters or actors were being favored over the other.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
the you got to remember these are all for the most part world champion martial
Of course.
artists. These
Of course.
guys are alpha males and females in the truest sense of the
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Um, they had egos and healthy egos for the most part.
Yeah.
There weren't too many kind of, oh, I refuse to lose to that guy sort of
Gotcha.
moments,
Gotcha.
but there was, a couple different people told me that somebody on the cast started counting how many lines they got each episode, and then everybody else was like,
Oh
well, yeah, I'm gonna
no.
start. I need to make sure. And so I think part of the keeping it close to the vest was to keep there from being any sort of whispers and rumor and
Mm,
innuendo. Now, I will say that some of the bigger names in the cast, your Machines, your
mm.
Red Dragons, your Olympuses, they knew more than maybe a Great Wolf or a
Of
band or
course. Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
would. I know Herb Olympus was very close to the producers just in general
Mm,
because he was based out of New York at the time, which is where the show was kind of based out of. They filmed in Orlando before Kids was in New York, so he was kind of closer to the producers than maybe somebody like a Jamie Webster or a Richard Brandon or somebody.
That's very interesting, because I could tell that halfway through season two, it felt very balanced with everybody's kind of like everybody's like time on camera was balanced pretty evenly amongst everybody, which for like a kid viewer you wouldn't care, but as an adult you kind
Yeah,
of go like, they're kind of cutting in and out from everybody. But I could see why that kind of became like they wanted to balance it out, and if it actually made sense, because you kind of still want to know these characters a little bit more and
yeah,
understand where they're coming from, right? At this point, establish one in season one, and now you're kind of seeing how they interact amongst each other in season two. um and even introducing new characters like Chameleon. Of course, she was an interesting character, and the only reason we here on the Twitch page that we were just like mind blown is that we've noticed that she was changing her clothes on every scene.
yeah.
So I mean, to tell you the truth, production wise, that is a lot of time, because
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
you're changing, you're this character who lives by the code of the chameleon, and changing clothes per each scene because you got to give her the impression that she's she's changed. She's a chameleon. She was changing
Yeah.
color. Um, did they ever tell you like anything about that the reason they kind of stuck with it, and then like
Oh yeah.
how much
Yeah.
work that was? Because it's insane.
Sure. Well, it was part of the original conception of the character. Sophia told me that when they pitched the character to her, that was part of the pitch. So I think it was kind of her gimmick, so to speak. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I know that it definitely added production time.
yeah.
There were not a lot of there wasn't excess footage. There wasn't a lot of time or
Hmm.
money for, especially by the time she joined the show, for well, we'll shoot it all and then we'll go back and shoot it all again with the other
Oh my
color. It was
god.
we're gonna do this shot, this shot, this shot, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna cut, and then you're gonna change, then we're gonna do this shot, this
Oh
shot,
my
this shot.
god.
So it definitely was harder, for her, but they had a very good continuity department, and they definitely, it was a challenge, but it was one they knew going in. It wasn't something that was like sprung on them
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
last
yeah.
minute. It
Yeah.
wasn't, they were able to choreograph it and plan it and really have that kind of in mind. And they tried to make it a not necessarily a focus, but they
Mhm.
tried to make it count. It wasn't just randomly happening 30 seconds into the match for no reason. They tried to make it when she was doing a flip, when
Yeah,
she
yeah,
was
yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah.
a moment in the
Yeah,
fight,
yeah,
as
yeah,
opposed
yeah.
to kind of something happening in the background.
Yeah. And then it's so funny that anybody in production's like, why does she have an iguana? Iguanas don't change their pigment of reptilian skin. That's why didn't she have a chameleon? I would think not having a chameleon because of course it's a lot smaller, it's more delicate, but
Yeah.
it's just so funny they
Uh,
gave her like literally the biggest iguana you can find.
I think it was just how it looked on camera.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think they found a trained one, and it was how it looked on camera, and
They look
a
good though.
reptile's a reptile. Yeah, I think it was just that's what they could get.
That's so cool, man. Um, I don't want to hold up your time because I know you are at East Coast. It's already getting pretty late. I don't want to hold you up. Um, Before anything, please, I beg of you to plug everything you want to plug in.
Sure.
I'm gonna give you the time to plug in anything you want right now at this moment. So the floor is all on you.
Awesome. Well, you can follow the book on your social media platform of choice. We're on Facebook at Quest for the Dragon Star. There's an older version of the page, which unfortunately I got hacked and lost access to. So
No.
it's at Quest for the Dragon Star is the live version of the Facebook page. You can find us there. You can find us on Twitter at WMAC Masters Book. You can find me at Chris Landis, KrisLandis. That's mostly me talking about soccer and stuff you probably don't care about, though. And then we're on Patreon at patreon.com/WNIC Masters Book.
Yep.
You can join there. There are a few different tiers. Every month I've been posting, some behind the scenes stuff, some updates on the book, how it's going. This month for International Women's Day, I posted the actual rough draft of the chapter for Ladies Night, the season 2,
That
episode
was
3, 4, something in that.
yeah,
But it kind of gives you a taste of how the book's gonna go. There's some stories that I don't have space for in the book, so I'm kind of putting them up there.
yeah.
I've shared some set drawings. There was the one I thought didn't get as much attention as it should have. One of the crew sent me a sheet of designed key symbols from before the
I
pilot was
saw
aired,
that. I
and
That blew my
some of
mind.
them were never used.
Never.
And so, there's all sorts of cool stuff up there. It's patreon.com/WMC Masters Book. Come join us. We're trying to make a little
Please.
community there.
Yes.
And, on the Patreon, I'm a little more free to answer questions because people are like paying to support,
Of
and I
course.
feel like I can spoil a little more than maybe I can on Twitter or
Yeah.
something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And when you're expecting I saw your update. I think you're expecting to get the book completed in a
Right.
sense, right? By
my
end.
my my plan, my goal, my
Mm-hmm.
tentative goal. I want to have the book out in early October. I want to have pre-orders up by August 1st, so I can take pre-orders at the reunion.
Yeah, yeah.
So as of right now, I've kind of got a timeline plotted out, but things change, things could
Of
go
course, of course,
wrong.
of course, of course, of course.
or if somebody from the cast or crew is like, hey, I need you to wait, for this reason or that reason,
Gotcha.
or
Yeah.
whatever. There's still a couple people who I'm trying to get a hold of that I'd be willing to wait for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shannon Lee, I've been in contact with Shannon Lee. She's very, very busy. She runs the Bruce Lee
She
Foundation. So
does. She
I'm hoping
does.
to have all my interviews wrapped up by the end of next month. But if Shannon's like, I can't talk till June, I'm waiting till June,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
I'm super excited. I cannot wait for the book. I actually, Chris, I really want to bring you back once you get closer to the
Yeah,
pre-order stuff.
yeah, for sure.
Definitely fix all this shit with this OBS stuff, which is the streaming thing. I really want to bring you back, and hopefully we can watch episode 1 and episode 2 together.
That'd
And
be
you can
great.
kind of
Yeah,
give us like some quick, cool, like, this is what happens here, or any like
yeah,
cool little facts. I would
yeah, man.
love to have you back here, man. Like, for
That
real, dog.
sounds
Like,
like a plan.
it was great. Thank you so much, by the way, for joining me and
Yeah.
everything so far. And you know what? I Please, guys, consider backing them up. If you're watching this on YouTube or on the VOD, I'll make sure to leave the information down below so you guys can go check it out. Check out his Patreon, check out his Twitter, check out also the Twitter account. But thank you so much, Christian. I don't want to hold you up because I know it's late. I feel you. It's want to end the day already. I'd be like, I just need to rest. But dude, thank you
Oh man, no, I
so
could talk
much for.
about this show.
Me too.
Were there any other questions anybody asked or anything? Or are we good?
No, but we had a comment that said from Latino Gamer says, "I've lived my whole life with no lack of closure to the show," which is talking about the last episode of.
This October, hopefully, you will get closure this year. I can promise you that.
Whoa, whoa, that dude! I cannot wait because it's been bugging me too. I'm not gonna
I
lie.
do just want to put this. I want to put this on the record. I
Yeah,
cannot say
yeah, yeah,
what it gives away the whole
yeah,
hook of the book. But I will
yeah.
tell you, they told me what was going to happen. It was awesome, and it was not what I expected.
Oh my god, I am so excited. So guys, please consider supporting Chris on the Patreon. The link is on the chat and it will be on the description of this video. Please consider doing so. I think people doing awesome stuff like this, especially for lost media or maybe media that people probably just looked over and just didn't bother doing a second glance. This show deserves more love than it does now. I think it's the most 90s kung fu martial arts show in I think in at the time. Honestly, I mean, Power Rangers, hey man, Power Rangers move over. WMAC Masters, we got real people who have like gold medals and have been at tournaments.
There are, I don't know if you know this or not, but there are deep and copious connections between Power Rangers, the American iteration, and Masters. The original American iteration of Power Rangers, the stunt crew
Mhm.
for that when they had to film new footage of the
Yeah, yeah,
cast in
yeah.
their suit, it was Eric Betts, Panther, Richard Brandon, Yin Yang Man, Ian and Gwen, Tsunami, and Bridget Riley, Baby Doll. Those were four of the five Power Rangers from that original U.S. iteration. Plus, Isaac Florentine was a director. Plus, Sophia Crawford came in. Murmur Chen was a putty
Whoa.
patroller. And then Mike Chat would later go on to be a Power Ranger face character later on in one of the later seasons.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
there's just copious
Wow, this is.
connections. Like, they're almost like cousins.
Well, I want to make sure that we come back when you're ready to do the pre-orders. I want you on here, dog. I want you right before,
Yeah, man.
right
Anytime.
after the reunion. I want you hot and ready here. We're gonna
I'll be
talk
ready.
more. We're gonna watch episode 1 and 2 if you can, and talk
Anytime.
more. We'll have people ask even more questions for sure.
Yeah,
With that being said, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thanks
I
for
hope
having
you.
me.
I wish you the best, and I'll still continue to support the Patreon because I am
Thanks, man.
a patron of this amazing venture, and please do so. There's some really cool stuff in there, especially the dragon belt, like all the different emblems that they didn't use. Super cool, super cool. Um, yeah, man, thank you so much. I wish you the best, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.
Definitely. Well, have a good one, man. Take care.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Wow, guys, that was pretty awesome. I mean, I don't know why my camera's not on. Hold on, let me get my camera on. If I can just get my camera, that'd be great. Can I get my camera? Uh, I gotta disengage and then un hold up, deactivate and then activate. Hopefully that works. There you go. I'm back. I'm back. I'm here. I'm here. Did you miss me? Hopefully. I was trying to figure out this stuff on the camera because there's so much shit going on. Guys, It's so cool. I that was an awesome interview with Christian. I mean, I didn't even want to drop. I was so fucking intrigued of everything. Wait, can we get the chola? Can we get the chola? Can we get a chola? Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay, we get, yeah. I didn't want to drop any audio bombs because, yeah, I really wanted to hear what he had to say about the show. And man, Christian's like really deep into the show. He knows way more than I do, and way more than any of us did any I mean, the research we did was like 10 minutes or something, you know, but it's crazy cool just to see the amount of like love he's putting into the show and how much it like means to him, because you know, it's not every day, you know, it's not every day you get to be like, you know what, I'm gonna do the show. Like, there's been plenty of Power Ranger books and all that stuff, but never about the Missing Master. So it was really cool. It was really interesting. I really definitely want him to come back once he does the pre-order stuff. I really want to help him out. I think very true. I think he knew way more than the showrunners as well. I am just, we got so much info. Like, check it out. We got the exclusives. They were considering a video game. It was partly gonna probably be similar to Mortal Kombat and stuff, right? That's one. We found out the powers that be were like, hey, these guys are beating Power Ranger. You know, that's a rumor, theory, I guess we could say. You know, they were like, hey, how come these guys are beating Power Ranger ratings? Pretty crazy. I mean, you gotta admit, like, people were into Power Rangers because, you know, the whole martial arts stuff, but just seeing that stuff. It's super cool of him too. I Polygon, you were right. Super nice of him to do the interview. We don't got the big numbers like everybody else does, but I really want to support people like this because they do things with lost media that definitely needs more. It's scary. You know, scary to say, like, a show like this down the road might not get remembered as much, but if we can boost it just a bit and get it into more eyes, I mean, anything's possible. You know. And please do follow him on Twitter. Go follow Patreon. It's super worth it. You know, really big shout outs to Christian. He's such a cool guy, such a sweet guy, super knowledgeable in this show, and just the stuff that it's been behind the scenes and him doing all this research. I tip my hat off for you, sir. Definitely. It takes a lot to really put that much time into a show, and to say that we here on the chat, we've enjoyed the shit out of the WMAC Master. We laughed, we cried, we wept when we saw Tsunami turn heel. It was unbearable to see Tsunami do that. But you know, this is the stuff that I want to start doing way more. You know, get people who worked on the media or people who are working around it. It is technically like crazy, you know. I mean, but I'm just glad we were able to get a lot of scoops. Too many scoops. Way too many scoops. I am like super hyped for this book, because if he has the keys to tell us more about what happened after season 2, to get some closure, that'd be great. I think all of us here are just like, what happens? Because it left on the craziest ending ever. We didn't expect it. So you know, I'm just super ecstatic. We got so much info, and of course I didn't want to ask anymore because I really want you guys to check out the book and read a book, because, you know, books are good. You should be reading books like this because it supports people like him who do so much research, so much work and passion to really get this going. You know, no one's telling him to do it. He's doing it. He's like, I love this show. I know how goofy it is, and I love it because this is great. This is a part of my childhood, and it's part of my childhood as well. So yeah, we're you know, I'm ecstatic. It was cool 101, just chilling, talking, shooting the shit, and really just, you know, hearing all this cool stuff about licensing and like the ups and downs. And I'm quite sure there's way more info of that in this book, which I highly recommend. It's called Quest for the Dragon Star, an oral history of WMAC masters, to be correct. Yeah, so I'm super psyched. I'm going to end the stream now because I'm gonna come back later tonight, but I wanted to save this particular interview and upload it onto YouTube because I wanted to be somewhere, not just be here and then completely fucking erase out of the world of the internet, because I think stuff like this does deserve to be somewhere, and people need to hear more about shows like this or lost media, stuff like this. And it's like that we'll never see the light of day of the pilot episode. I would love to see it. I would die to see that pilot episode, but we'll just have to wait and see. Without further ado, guys, I will see you guys within maybe like at 9 p.m. I'll be back. I'm gonna be playing some Elden Ring, later tonight. We're gonna do a little bit of our NPC stuff early, and then we're gonna go to Elden Ring. Right now, though, I'm gonna take my dog because she needs to go and walk, because she's a fatty, chunky dog. She needs to go exercise. So I will see you guys a little bit later. I will end this here so that way people can just watch this in particular and not get mixed with anything else, and I'm able to download it as well. Thank you, everybody who retweeted this too. Thank you so much. Even if it just reaches a couple people, we know that at some point, in some way, it's gonna reach more. I'll catch you guys later. All right. So remember, 9 p.m. we'll be back. We'll play some Elden Ring. See you then. All right.